What's the most unlawful thing you've ever done and gotten away with? Story 1. Technically, I was involved in no fewer than 3 felonies within a single day. There's an annual event held in Northern California known as the Kinetic Sculpture Race. Teams converge from across the state and sometimes even worldwide to participate in a multi-day time trial using amphibious human-powered vehicles they've crafted and constructed. During the year of my attendance, there were numerous incredibly creative participants. Among them was a large yellow septic tank modified with wheels and a propeller. The mere thought that my team could potentially emerge victorious had me absolutely thrilled. Unfortunately, a small obstacle stood between me and a chance to pilot the kinetic sculpture I'd helped build. Each entrant needed to be at least of legal age to compete, and I hadn't quite hit that mark yet. In fact, most of our team was, considering the majority of us were members of the high school robotics team. We might have been more concerned about the age-related mandate, except for the fact that having the fastest vehicle was only one of the ways someone could win. One of the other ways was to vie for the coveted Most Creative Cheaters award. You see, the race in question was more of a lighthearted showcase for the sculptures rather than a strict competition. Naturally, everyone aimed to win, but playful antics such as bribing a judge with stickers to overlook certain transgressions were both anticipated and endorsed. Given our team's lack of legal adults but nevertheless strong determination to attend and compete, one of my friends suggested that we all craft our own fake identification with the caveat that they had to be glaringly obvious counterfeits. To give you an idea of how the final results turned out, the young man who initially suggested the strategy arrived with a card resembling the illegitimate offspring of a tie-dyed shirt and a flamingo. His portrait displayed a wide grin, and the only visible text proclaimed, "I'm of legal age, really, trust me." Surprisingly, that was the most convincing of our fake identifications. Mine, on the other hand, was simply a scrap of paper hastily scrawled with "Max is totally an adult," as I had forgotten to make one until after our arrival at the competition. In the end, everyone on my team participated in the race. Overall, we performed decently, and although we didn't secure victory in any speed-focused events, we did manage to leave with the Most Creative Cheaters trophy. The individual who presented it to us even took special care to enumerate all of our different pranks, stunts, capers, and jests, including the fact that we weren't even actually allowed to be there. Story 2. I was about 5 miles away from home, completely out of gas. The nearest gas station was approximately a mile away, but to my dismay, I'd left my wallet at home. I had enough change for gas but lacked a gas can, which was priced at around $10 and a bit steep for my situation. It was around noon and I was stranded on the side of a fairly busy road. I spotted a large house set far back from the road and decided to check if anyone was home. My aim was to inquire if they had a spare gas can I could borrow. Approaching the door, I rang the doorbell. The interior lights were off and I could hear dogs barking inside. I waited patiently for about 5 minutes, but there was no response. Making my way down their walkway, I noticed a shed next to the garage. Luckily, the door wasn't locked, and when I swung it open, I was struck by the sight of a nearly empty shed. It looked barren except for the gas can that my lazy self craved the most. I took that thing and got straight out of Compton. I hightailed it to my car, gave it its fuel, and booked it home. The next day, I went to the gas station, filled it up, and re-broke into their shed, intending to put it back. However, to my surprise, the shed was full. The owner had organized the gardening supplies meticulously, and I thought, oh no. Realizing they must have noticed it was missing, I left the can by the door, closed the shop, and left their property to head back home. Alright, props to him for returning the gas can. Even though he borrowed it without asking, he put some effort into making it right, at least. Story 3. Driving at about 140 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. It was 1 in the morning, I was young and reckless with a fast car. I had just exited the ramp onto the freeway when another car rapidly approached from behind. Simply seeking a reason to accelerate, I seized the opportunity. I maintained that speed for perhaps a minute before gradually slowing down to a normal speed. The sheer velocity alone was quite terrifying. And a few seconds later, I'm greeted by a blinding spotlight shining through my driver's side window. I glance over and notice "police" written across the side of the car. Oh no. I pull over, the cop approaches with a drawn weapon, yelling and screaming at me. He asks if I've been drinking, demands to know what I've been up to, and threatens me with impounding my car, arrest, and a $1,000 fine. I had no response. I just sat there, stunned, struggling to answer his questions. After he lectured me for a while, he fell silent, then said, "Are you kidding me? Get out of here." And he walked away. I don't drink, but I definitely went home and downed a beer while sharing the story to my roommate. Story 4. I rode the city bus multiple times without paying during my vacation in Europe, and over the course of 6 months, my friends and I stole 50 traffic cones from the side of the road as a birthday present for my friend. He's renowned in our friend group for nabbing these cones, or as he'd call them, Kyles, from the roadside. We snagged them in cities, construction zones, backcountry roads, and even one across the street from a police station. We were particularly proud of that one. Our rule was to never take a cone that was in use or didn't have at least one other cone performing the same job. Finally, while he was out getting a tattoo, we gathered a group to transport all the cones and arrange them in his backyard. When he arrived home, we all surprised him and led him to the backyard where he acted like a dog given 400 tennis balls. It was dark, so all we could see were the reflectors flying left and right as he joyfully played in his field of Kyles. At that time, he was dealing with a breakup and his parents' divorce, and he was exhausted from working on his last semester of college, so the gesture turned out to be incredibly needed by the time his birthday arrived. Traffic cones for a birthday gift? Weird flex, but if it works for him, it works. And if you think that last story was pretty wild, wait until you hear story number 7. The guy there was the real thief. Story 5. I've been pulled over twice in the last year, and things could have and should have gone a lot worse than they did. I'm somewhat like Ricky from TPB when it comes to dealing with the cops. The first time I was driving back from hunting in BLM in southern Colorado Canyonlands, a very remote area. We had just hiked about 8 miles and had drunk all my water, so I cracked open a beer while driving back to camp. I wasn't actually hunting, just hiking with the guys who had tags, but I had one with mags, which is prohibited in Colorado. We also smoked in the truck because, well, it's Colorado. Anyway, we got pulled over while driving back through BLM, drinking, smoking, and having lots of concealed weapons without a permit for them and mags. The cop was cool about it. Mainly, we could tell it was too remote of an area for him to have to deal with us alone. He wrote my buddy a minor ticket related to his license and told us to stop drinking in the truck. The second time, I was driving out of town to Utah after leaving the brewery. Probably had 2 beers, and my buddy was drinking in the passenger seat. The cop pulled us over, and we had way too many weapons in the vehicle. The cop asked us where we were headed, so we said Moab. He asked why we were going there, and we mentioned mountain biking. This threw him off track because he started telling us how awesome Slick Rock Trail is. We kept our hands on the dash because of the weapons and beers in the center console. Basically, he just expressed that he wished he could go with us and told us to go on our way. Now, Colorado cops are pretty chill. Story 6. Many years ago, I used to commute from Washington, D.C. down 395 South to get home. To evade traffic, I began work early, around a 5:30 a.m. arrival, which allowed me to leave early enough to outpace most traffic on most days. If you're familiar with the area, you'll know that 395 has some HOV lanes in the middle of the freeway. 395 boasts 4 lanes in each direction, plus an additional 2 in the middle. These 2 lanes in the middle are reversible to add capacity. They operate as HOV only during certain hours of the day. However, before and after those hours, they're open to everyone. Yeah, so one day I'm driving home and decided to take the lanes before they become HOV. I merge onto those lanes, and there's no one in front of me. They must have just switched it over or something. The only car beside me is another car identical to mine, a 2000-something Subaru Impreza STI. However, theirs is a different color. I look over at him, he looks over at me, we both looked at the empty road. We've been going about 65, 70, but then we both slowed down to 60. You can see the cars behind us getting closer. You know, they thought we were some slow dirtbags who would drive side by side and go slow the entire time. 3 horn honks and we were gone. We did 155 miles per hour, bumper to bumper, down 395S in the middle of the day and flew past every car driving in the regular lanes. We reached the 495 interchanges in something like 3 minutes. It was absolutely insane. I could only imagine what people thought. Can't believe there were no cops either. I was expecting a barricade at the end of it all. Story 7. I used to work in a diner where many people paid in cash. Throughout the day, I'd juggle 2 cups of coffee between different tables as bills. This involved one table paying cash for their bill. Before finalizing it, I'd transfer the 2 cups of coffee to another bill, then settle the table as cash. I probably made at least an extra $50 to $100 a day doing this. The owners were unfamiliar with the computer system, so I was never caught. At a different cafe, customers would order at the counter. If they paid in cash, I'd give them change, wait for them to leave, and then pocket the money without registering the item on the computer. I did this a few times a day to avoid being conspicuous. That was years ago when I was young and a dirtbag. I'm straight as an arrow now. I wish I could repay both places, but I don't have the guts to face that kind of situation. This guy took mandatory tipping to a whole new level. Now, if you've ever pulled off a crazy stunt and gotten away with it, share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And if you're down for more epic tales, please do subscribe to my channel today. All you gotta do is click on that red button, and it really helps me out a lot. I got more videos waiting for you, so let's go ahead and get back to them. Story 8. I brewed wine in my AP biology teacher's classroom without her knowledge. During my senior year of high school, I served as the TA for AP Bio, granting me ample downtime in the lab. One day, a few friends and I realized that all we needed to make alcohol was yeast, fruit, thyme, so we proceeded to make it. I purchased grapes and honey, and the teacher already had yeast on hand. We discovered a recipe on eHow, combined everything in a massive jar, and informed others that we were making quote-unquote jam. I devised a contraption to release gas for fermentation, and we stored it in her lab cabinets for a month. We had keys to everything, and with numerous cabinets, we assumed she wouldn't discover it. It could have led to suspension, expulsion, or worse, given that we were minors producing alcohol on school premises, but we just brushed it off. The wine turned out pretty well, a bit stronger than the typical bottled stuff, and slightly carbonated. I'd rate it a 9 out of 10, and definitely would do it again. Story 9. My brother and some friends of mine were fooling around once in our garage when I was probably around the 9th grade, and we stumbled upon a large can of black powder, which my dad had for some reason. We decided to create a pipe explosive and set it off on the gravel road in the cemetery next door. We found a piece of PVC pipe, which I believe was threaded on both sides, and we capped it. Lacking a fuse, we drilled a hole in it, filled it with the black powder, and then used model glue to create a makeshift fuse of sorts. We lit that thing up, and for probably like 5 minutes, nothing happened. We were maybe 60 or 70 feet away behind a tree, debating whether we should approach and relight the model glue, since we were certain it had extinguished. It appeared to have barely ignited initially anyway. As it turned out, model glue burned slowly and without an extremely visible flame. We allowed reason to prevail and were walking back toward my house, debating what to do about this improvised firework lying in the middle of the road when it finally detonated. By then, we must have been about 80 or 90 yards away, and when it blasted, it was deafeningly loud with gravel raining down all over the tin roof of the apartment building across the street. Now thinking back, that was definitely the dumbest and most unlawful thing I've ever done. Story 10. Okay, I'll talk. In the 3rd grade, I cheated on my history exam. In 4th grade, I stole my Uncle Max's toupee and glued it to my face when I played Moses in my Hebrew school play. In 5th grade, I pushed my sister Eddie down the stairs and then blamed it on the dog. When my mom sent me to the summer camp for fat kids and they served lunch, I went nuts and pigged out and they kicked me out. But the worst thing I ever did, I mixed up this fake barf at home, went to a movie theater, hid it in my jacket, climbed up to the balcony, and then made a noise like this. And then I dumped it over the side, all over the people in the audience. And then, this was horrible, all the people started getting sick. I've never felt so bad in my entire life. This guy was a wild child, worse than probably Dennis the Menace, and that was just a cartoon. Story 11. In college, I stole a bike. I know, I suck. I've regretted it every day since. It's something I think about a lot. I was broke and in need of a bike. I rode a lot, and there it was, just sitting there, unlocked. I just got on and rode away. I used it for a few months, then it got stolen from me. I felt relieved, yet saddened, but I believe I deserved it. Now, every year on Christmas gift day, I donate a girl's bike and a boy's bike to the downtown rescue mission. I do it specifically because I know I hurt someone else, and since I can never fully repay that person, I can only try to offset the taking of happiness by giving someone else joy. I plan to continue doing this every year for the rest of my life as long as I can afford it. Story 12. I fled from the cops one night while I was living in Italy. I had my 2012 Mustang over there, and one night, heading home from a skate park about an hour away from my base and a few miles from the autostrada on some country roads, I rounded a curve and passed by a cop sitting in the inside of the corner. I was going a bit faster than the posted speed limit, and although speed limits are somewhat flexible, police over there seemed eager to pull over someone in an obviously rare car. The instant I glimpsed the flicker of light in my mirror, I was gone. A Mustang in Italy is significantly rarer than a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, and since I was nowhere near where other Americans would typically be, with no other apparent reason to be in the town we were in, I raced it to the autostrada and floored it home. I have no idea if the cop even pursued or took any action, but I know I did. Story 13. I explored an office building that wasn't open yet, set off the alarm, and had to run from the police. Also, I drank a bottle of beer in a park over the weekend and didn't even brown bag it. F you, Massachusetts open container laws. Additionally, I opened someone else's mail once. Then I also built a bonfire on a golf course and had to run from the police with that one. This guy probably enjoys watching the world burn. Story 14. I stole a pack of magic cards from Hastings and pulled a foiled Jace, the Mind Sculptor. It funded my entire Tempered Steel and Birthing pod decks, and I dominated my local FNM for months. But I'm pretty sure my biggest one was breaking into a house and then taking their Ferrari for a joyride when I was a freshman in college. My rationale at the time was, I'm about to celebrate my birthday, I should really capitalize on the time I can still be charged in juvenile court. Story 15. I don't claim my tips. If I did, it would effectively double or triple my earnings for the year, pushing me into a higher tax bracket and resulting in no tax return at the end of the year. Now that would be terrible because the cost of living in my city is high while the PPP is low. I need all the cash I can get to survive here. Also, my sister accidentally brought at least 5 rolls of grass on the plane to the Caribbean. It looked at least like 5. I don't smoke, so I could be mistaken. It was quite amusing when we started unpacking, and right on top of all of her stuff was a bag about the size of a coffee mug. The fact that it went through 2 airport security checks without being stopped at any point is pretty hilarious. It could have turned out very poorly had she been caught. It was really just a terrible accident. Story 16. After my cousin had to go to the hospital for the 3rd time because her husband mistreated her, I decided to take action. I sneaked into their backyard and created some commotion on the porch until he emerged to investigate. I landed a solid blow on him, the hardest I've ever hit anyone. My intention was to teach him a small lesson and demand that he stop bothering her, but I ended up knocking him out unconscious. Afterwards, I used some of their son's art supplies from outside to craft a note for him, warning, if you lay a hand on her again, I will resort to something more severe. Some may find this hard to believe, but it indeed occurred. I don't harbor any remorse about it, and if the situation arose again, I wouldn't hesitate to act the same way. Story 17. I only have about 3 legitimate games for the Xbox 360. The rest, well, they came from places. Also, I've bought, sold, and smoked grass. I've sped at 160 on a motorcycle on the freeway, 65 limit. Got pulled over on the same motorcycle with expired tags, no proof of insurance, and no license. Engaged in breaking and entering, used to sneak through backyards to spy on random or not so random people. Broke into my high school to go swimming or rappelling. Appropriated about 5 scooters and mopeds. Engaged in mailbox vandalism. Accidentally set a church parking lot on fire. I sold answers to exams, made about $250 on the trigonometry final, bought liquor, beer, smokes, underage, got away with a few adult magazines and tapes, yes, tapes from a convenience store, almost got arrested, and nearly got into a knife fight at a coffee shop. I should probably stop now. Story 18. I pirated Windows 7, installed a crack to make it look legitimate, and downloaded a now legitimate Windows 11. Also, I managed to obtain a free copy of Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance on eBay by making up an elaborate lie. I do wish I could find a way to repay the person who sent it, but unfortunately, I have no recollection of who initially sent it to me. Additionally, I took a donut from the donut case in the grocery store and ate it while I was shopping. I didn't pay for the donut, and I used to do this all the time, calling it my shopping donut. Story 19. In the gymnasium of my high school, there were huge silhouettes of panthers painted on the wall representing the school's mascot. On the final day of 10th grade, my friend and I broke open an ink pen and spread the ink on the wall, resulting in the panther having a giant willy. Story 20. There's this particular store that labels their items very generically. For instance, they might label 3 different shirts as jersey at different prices, etc. So what I used to do was switch the tags of something I liked to the cheapest price I could find that still seemed reasonable enough, and then purchase it. It saved me a lot of money, and I did this for a while. My reasoning was that the workers might not be aware of their own products, and since I was still making a purchase, it wasn't technically stealing. However, I don't do that anymore. Story 21. The most unlawful thing I've done was this story of a friend on a heavily intoxicated summer night around 2 a.m. about a closed-down bar with a couple of cool neon lights. One thing led to another, and we drove over to the bar in another friend's car. The back door of the bar was glass, so we threw a rock or something through it, and it shattered. I ended up leaving with a nice Samuel Adams sign, but I still feel guilty about it. On a more routine note, when I crave Moe's, I use a birthday coupon by crudely editing the date in Paint and printing it really small. This way, I get an entree plus a drink for only $2. Story 22. A homeless man was teaching a young homeless me how to survive. We used to stroll into Walmart, fill up an entire cart, and casually leave the store with a loaded cart and a receipt. We repeated this at 3 different Walmarts nearly every day. By doing that, we'd earn $100 to $300 per day, enough to cover a hotel room and some extras, of course. This dude and his mentor basically unlocked the infinite goods hack at Walmart of all places. Hey, thanks for hanging in there and watching to the very last video. I'm sure you might want to hear more stories about people getting into trouble, so check out what's your best dumb criminal story. Story 4 is intense. Don't miss it. Thank you for watching this one.